everyone. Welcome to the first talk of the day. Well done for getting out of bed in time. I'm going to talk today about one of our recent projects, but first I'll give you a quick overview of our studio. And also, I'm Simon French. I'm the head of CG at Electric Theatre. Electric Theatre is a collective of talented artists, makers, and innovators, how we describe ourselves. We basically obsessed with just creating the best, most interesting and visionary work out there. In 7 years, we've grown from 4 people to having studios in London, LA, and Bristol. We work across many disciplines: CGI, full CGI, 2D animation, 2D compositing, color grading, all that sort of stuff. And we embrace technological advancement and celebrate and nurture the best people. And crucially for this room, we have Houdini at our core and have done since day one. This is the team. There's some nice people in London, some nice people in LA, and we also have some nice people in Bristol, but I don't have a photo of them, unfortunately. And to give you a quick tour of the studio, our studio dog Tubbs has made a video for you.
Come on, baby, I got no time to waste. Come on, baby, you're gonna like it once you get a taste. I got a feeling in my heart, something good is about to start. And that's a hot dog, hot dog. Watch me eat a hot dog. Hot dog, hot dog. Come on, let's do the hot dog.
That was all her idea. And I'll play you a quick reel as well. I think. Hold on. Yeah. Oh. Did that play? So today I'm going to talk to you about a project we did recently, last year, Virgin Atlantic, Depart the Everyday. The briefest ad was meant to transport you to this fantastical vision of flight, rainbow-coloured ice cream pouring from air vents, kids dancing on the plane ceiling, and cargo area filled with a giant ball pit. The idea that Virgin wanted to put across was that travel is anything but ordinary with Virgin. So I'll play the ad and then I'll break it down. No chance of sun as those clouds. Layer of grey clouds seems like it's here. So this is a job that's obviously got lots of elements. There's lots of sort of interior heavy compositing shots, but this talk is going to be mainly about the exterior shots and about how we basically progressed from all the way from previs to finished shots for essentially shots that you can't possibly shoot. And also crucially again, I'm going to talk about how Houdini helped us to do this. So previs was necessary for all CG shots, obviously, because lots of technically challenging setups, and this previs morphed into postvis, and there was a sort of constant process of refinement in terms of camera and pacing, cloud layout, lighting, and compositional balance of each of the shots, and this constant back and forth sort of continued right up until delivery, and was this sort of constant loop of refinement. I'm going to go through some of these slides quite quickly because time, I can see it, half-hour slot is actually much shorter than you expect it to be. The airplane liftoff shot, first part of the story, the point of this thing actually was that you're leaving on a miserable day, you take off, and then you break out into this glorious weather, and so it's meant to be about the joy of flight, basically. So the first part of the story is leaving the everyday, the grey, the pouring rain, the monotony, England, in inverted commas. Yeah, so this was the starting point from the director, his sketch. Now, obviously you can't shoot a shot of a plane like this, so we found a runway, and we took a drone to an empty airfield, and we shot something like this. It's obviously missing some elements, and ultimately, you know, the idea of this is that it was sort of meant to be the plate, and then we add stuff to it, but realistically what it became was just a texture that we tracked it and reprojected it, and it just became a starting point for the texture, because we had to, you know, the height of the drone was never going to be quite right once we'd put the plane in and got all the scales right, and the path was too wobbly and all that sort of stuff. So this is obviously what we were aiming for, and this is where it went to. So obviously you can kind of see that the runway has changed, the sky is new, there's rain, there's you know, all these interactive elements, there's a new city in the background. Pretty much the only thing that remains from what we shot is the grass texture reprojected back onto the floor, onto a ground plane. And then sort of talking more broadly about the kind of look and feel that the director wanted to get from this ad, his reference was, you'll probably recognize this shot, this is from Interstellar, and he loved this sort of thing of the camera mounted on the exterior of a plane, the visceral sort of shaking, the rattling, the light rolling across things. And it was a great reference, and it would be, you know, something we've all seen and could identify with. And he wanted the idea to be visceral and stunning, but unsurprisingly, Virgin didn't really like the violent wobble and shake, and so this was the start of a bit of a battle between smooth reality versus beauty in storytelling. So, you know, a previous shot ends up being a bit more like that, a lot smoother. And yeah, and sort of, again, going back to the sort of how we approach this job, we decided to keep the previs and animation entirely inside Houdini, as it offered a very direct way of arriving at many answers in parallel as we progressed through the job. So there was a simple rig to control the flaps that were just transforms on pack groups, and this went through chops to add some noise and shake, and that was also added to the camera, although I think not in this stage of the previs. For some shots we had to add some flapping wings, and we had to unpack for that. And the other massive advantage of doing all of our previs in Houdini was that we could lay out the clouds directly into the in the scene, in the previs, and they would evolve iteratively, and we could light the plane and the clouds approximately in the viewport, and this was sufficient to kind of progress shots and get us sign off on the look and the feel and the layout of things. Moving from previs to finished shots, the challenges are obviously that they're pretty much all fully CG shots, and the idea is to aim for photoreal. So we had lots of elements to create. There's cloud creation, there's rain, there's water streaking along the hull of the plane, heat haze from the engine, heat distortion, that sort of stuff, and then obviously the continual kind of balancing, animation balance of trading off reality versus perfection, because it's, you know, you've got to sell flight. This is just a few of the kind of elements that went into making up some of these shots, and we try to break it down into as many individual elements that were rendered separately as possible, because obviously in the commercials world you get constant changes, and as much as we could defer the look and the feel and the balance of these things to comp, the better. And we even rendered the lights on continually. These are just the flashing lights, you know, the little bleepy lights you get on the side of a plane, and the lights and their effect on the other elements, so that they could be retimed in comp as well. So you get a breakdown of a shot that goes something like this. So you can see there's sort of many different layers that go into making up that one shot. Okay. So moving on to the next section of the ads, breaking into the clouds, and this was a very key moment in the film, because it was, you were breaking out of the nasty weather and into the beautiful skies, and this was where you were meant to feel like you know, travel was an amazing thing with Virgin. So the director had kind of always imagined that we were flying in amongst the clouds the whole time. It was going to be more dynamic and dramatic, and it was going to lead to better looking shots. The client, on the other hand, weren't so keen, as they were used to seeing their planes soaring above the clouds in blue skies at 30,000 feet, which looks beautiful, but it's also slightly less interesting, you know, for staging interesting shots. So there's quite a bit of discussion about how much we'd need to be in this world, or high, you know, in the clouds or higher up. And then obviously for us, there was the trade-off, the technical challenges of having to make fewer clouds that held up in close-up versus many clouds that worked from afar, and how much of that was CG and how much of it was matte painting and all that sort of stuff. So these are some of the references we were supplied with. And as you can see from this is now a previous render, we were sort of working at a level beyond grayscale whenever we delivered shots to the director and agency, and it sort of really helped for everyone to get a good understanding of what the shot was going to be as a whole, because you know, clients often struggle to make that leap from previs to what something will ultimately look like, and so doing all this stuff inside of Houdini really helped to get sign off quicker, and we can answer questions more directly, like how fast is the plane moving, is this the intended mood and lighting, cloud layouts, you know, are they fluffy enough, should we see London beneath us, etc. Moving on to the cloud creation, this was obviously one of our big technical challenges. They're incredibly complicated and varied. They've got many levels of voluminous growth and puffy shapes and candy floss and wispy bits and all this sort of stuff, and it's always evolving and evolving. And so first step is obviously to do a bit of a cloud geek out, know your cirrus from your cumulonimbus, and then decide kind of what kind of clouds we were after, and so where we invest our kind of efforts, and we don't want to make a palette of every single cloud that exists, because they might not be required. So yes, as we started to move into trying to create these in CG, we obviously looked at the tools that were available inside of Houdini, but also what we did was we started to look at the open source papers and files that Disney supplied on their research into cloud creations for films like Moana. And they actually supply data sets for clouds that you can download. But fundamentally, they're just baked snapshots of a cloud VDB. So it's not something you can take and just inject into your scene and boom, you've got perfect clouds. So we took this VDB that they supply, we sort of cut it into slices and kind of looked at how they were distributing the noise patterns and what they were doing. And it kind of seemed like in their one example, they had two main kind of cloud types combined together, which were cumulus mediocris and cumulonimbus. Yeah, basically big and fluffy and bulbous on the top and wispy and soft at the bottom. And so we set about trying to recreate that. The way we kind of drew the shape of the clouds was we drew curves in space, and then we, by various means, converted those into VDBs. There's kind of two main types, like I said, the wispy, streaky ones and the bulbous ones, and we blended between these two types with kind of ramps through 3D space, and the noise was masked in sections so that different kind of noise qualities could be modulated throughout the cloud. And then the other issues, of course, that we faced were lighting and shading in clouds. They're very expensive in terms of rendering because of all the layers and layers of opacity. We did use the built-in cloud shader in Houdini, but we baked out all the light maps in the end for each of the clouds because obviously the lighting wasn't changing, only the camera was moving and the plane. And so that's really helped at render time, that we had a lot of this lighting pre-calculated. It didn't mean the renders were fast, they were still pretty slow, but it definitely helped to do the pre-baking. And in the end, we actually only really had 5 different cloud assets throughout the whole spot, and they enabled us to fill all the shots with enough variety. So here's a breakdown, one of those shots. And you can kind of see how many layers are needed to bring together to create the kind of detail and the softness and the nice light interaction that you want from a shot like this. And it's also kind of clear how much comp is your friend here, because they can take a render that looks lovely but still a bit CG, and they can sort of add the softness, the glow, and all sorts of other tricks that just you might get to in CG, but they're kind of hard, time consuming, or just very slow to render to get straight out of the box. Okay, so the next section, the plane cross section. This was quite a tricky shot, and it was one of the first points in the ad where we're starting to realize that things are getting kind of weird in this ad. It's not straightforward, but it's sort of weird, but in a good way. And although the original boards and concept were pretty clear, the brief was we want to see the plane, a cutaway of the plane, and we want to see all the stuff, the structure inside the plane. Bringing it to life was a bit harder, just because of the things we encountered as we started to build the shot and realize what it would actually look like. So we've seen cutaways of planes before, and so you kind of understand what makes up the part of the plane you don't see when you're sitting in it. So this is where the previous was heading, and it looked like it was going to work. It sort of looked like the boards, and it was hitting the brief. The main issue was that it wasn't fun, and that's the whole ad was about flying being fun. It was kind of just accurate to the specs of the plane, but much more importantly, it was downright scary because it was effectively half a plane flying through the air with the tail torn off. And it also didn't help that later on in the commercial, there's shots showing a man drifting off to sleep and falling through the sky. So if you weren't paying attention, it might feel like yeah, this Virgin plane is split up en route and everyone was falling out, which is not a great advertising strategy. So, this realization, though kind of obvious, and it kind of should have been obvious from the storyboard, at the storyboard stage, really only came up quite late in the day. And it was only a few weeks to go when we had to come up with something that hadn't been briefed, to try and turn the shot around. How can we make the shot feel fun, safe, exciting, be part of the story? And there were a number of ideas thrown about: dancing luggage in the underside of the plane. There were also ideas that, well, that idea itself was kind of rejected because, like I said, we were very, very close to the end. There was no time to kind of build new assets, animate them, render them, make sure it all looked good. There was another idea for gummy bears, but again, we thought it was going to be a hard read, and it was also going to be quite heavy on the rendering. So in the end, we arrived at this idea of the ball pit, which it kind of ticked all the boxes because it was a relatively technically easy, colourful solution, and it was achievable in the time, basically. I think this was done with a week to go. So that's kind of it. I sort of got through it quicker than I thought because I was rattling through it. I've got 8 minutes left, but to finish up, I'll show you the making of that we put together. It's basically all the stuff I've just covered, but more. So you could have stayed in bed a little bit longer and just watched the whole thing condensed into 2 minutes with music. But it helps you understand. It helps you understand some of the other things that went into making the commercial, because it's not just the CG shots. There's a number of 2D plate extensions, camera tricks to make glasses slide into people's hands, fixing rainbow ice cream that wouldn't pour out of a nozzle on the day, stuff like that. So I'll play this making of. Thank you. And yeah, like it says, come and chat to us. We have a recruitment booth for the next 2 days. So yeah, come and talk to us. Cheers. Any questions? I'll just hold it.
Any questions?
Ah.
How long did the entire production take?
It was probably about 3 months. Yep.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk. It was very interesting. I'm here.
Hi.
A general question. In a project like this, are you given the models of the plane by the engineers of the plane, or do you have to do that yourself?
Well, it's actually quite interesting. We do loads of car ads where you obviously want CAD data, and it can be sometimes incredibly hard to extract CAD data out of car companies, and we couldn't get CAD data for everything, obviously, for the plane. But what was surprising was that they did give us an incredibly detailed document that basically, it was like a multi-page document that broke down every single aspect of the plane and how it was put together, which struck me as odd that it was that easy to get hold of something so technical about a plane. But yeah, so we had some bits.
So you guys could build the next Airbus, I guess. No?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Simon.
Cool. Thank you.